What really happened to Flight MH370? Was it just a mysterious disappearance? Or something far more terrifying lurking in the depths? Tonight, we uncover the chilling last transmissions, ghost signals, and secrets no one was ever supposed to hear. Stay until the end, if you dare. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the most horrifying true stories we reveal here. The routine flight that never landed. The night was calm over Kuala Lumpur International Airport on March 8, 2014. Flight MH370, a Boeing 777, stood ready on the tarmac, illuminated by the airport lights. Inside the cabin, 227 passengers settled into their seats, families heading home, business travelers checking emails, tourists flipping through guidebooks. 12 crew members moved through the aisles, offering warm smiles and polite greetings. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a seasoned pilot with over 18,000 flight hours, sat confidently at the controls. Beside him, First Officer Farrah Hamid was completing his final training flight before becoming a certified captain. The weather forecast was perfect, the sky above cloudless. At 12:41 a.m., MH370 began its smooth ascent into the dark sky, bound for Beijing. Passengers glanced out of their windows at the glittering city lights below, unaware it would be the last time they saw land. Everything appeared normal for the first 38 minutes. At 1:19 a.m., air traffic control in Malaysia made routine contact with the cockpit. The pilot's voice came back, calm and professional. "Good night, Malaysian 370. It should have been just another standard sign-off, but within minutes, something changed. The plane's transponder responsible for sending identification and altitude data suddenly went silent. On the radar screens, MH370's blip froze, and then vanished. But in a separate military radar feed, operators saw something the public didn't. The plane had made a sharp, deliberate left turn, cutting across the Malay Peninsula. It was heading into a stretch of the ocean so remote that it wasn't even mapped in detail. No distress call, no explanation, no warning, and as the minutes passed, the only thing the radar could tell them was that Flight 370 was leaving the known world and heading toward a place no one had planned to go. The last voice on the radio. For weeks after the disappearance of MH370, investigators replayed the final moments they had on record. The calm voice of a pilot saying, "Good night, Malaysian 370. To the public, it seemed unremarkable, just a standard handover to Vietnamese air traffic control. But behind closed doors, there was another recording. It came from an air traffic controller who had been working that night. He claimed that the publicly released version of the cockpit exchange wasn't the original. The version he heard, the one that was quickly locked away in a government archive, was longer by just 3 seconds. 3 seconds that changed everything. In those extra moments, after the captain's voice faded, something else bled through the radio static. At first, it sounded like faint interference, a low, droning hum. But as the volume was boosted, a pattern emerged, syllables, almost like speech, spoken in a voice so low it seemed to vibrate in the bones. Experts were brought in to analyze it. One linguist, an elderly professor from Jakarta, claimed it wasn't any known human language, but the cadence reminded him of ancient maritime chants rituals used by lost island civilizations to call the deep. Another specialist disagreed. She believed the sound was not linguistic at all, but biological creature's call, distorted by the radio. The most unsettling part came when they filtered the audio further. Layered under the deep hum was a whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "It's behind you." No one could explain how a phrase in perfect English could appear in the middle of an encrypted aviation channel. The air traffic controller, who leaked the existence of the original tape, vanished 2 weeks later. His apartment was found unlocked, dinner still on the table, television still on. His work laptop had been wiped completely clean. Officially, the disappearance of MH370 remained a mystery of failed systems and possible hijacking. But those who had heard the uncut transmission knew it was something else. Something older. Something that didn't belong in the sky or the sea. The last voice on the radio had not been human. And if the whispers were right, that IT wasn't the last time it would speak. 3 days after MH370 vanished from radar, official search efforts were already in chaos. Theories clashed, politicians contradicted one another, and the families of the missing passengers were left with nothing but silence. But far from the command centers and press briefings, a lonely amateur radio operator named William Clark was sitting in his small shack on the coast of Western Australia, scanning the shortwave frequencies like he did every night. At exactly 2:47 a.m., he caught something unusual. The signal was faint at first, just static, the occasional crackle of distant thunderstorms. Then, out of nowhere, a human voice burst through the noise. It was panicked, breathless, speaking in rushed English. "They are here. They are inside. We can't." The message cut off in a burst of static so sharp it made William wince. He adjusted his dial, trying to lock onto the source. The voice returned for just 2 more seconds. "Oh God, they see me." And then, nothing except for a high-pitched ringing that seemed to pulse in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. William scribbled down the signal's coordinates, calculated from his equipment. They pointed to a stretch of the southern Indian Ocean over 1,000 miles from the last known position of MH370. No shipping lanes passed through that area. No flights. No islands. Just empty, black water. Or at least, it should have been empty. Later that morning, William uploaded the recording to a small online forum for shortwave enthusiasts. Within hours, the post was flooded with strange replies, some in broken English, others in what looked like gibberish. One stood out: "Do not listen again. Do not answer the call." When William checked the recording again that night, he noticed something he hadn't before. In the background of the voice beneath the panic, beneath the static, there was another sound. A deep, resonant tone, so low it could barely be heard, but it made the hairs on his arms stand on end. It was as if something massive was humming beneath the surface of the ocean. The following night, William tried to scan the same frequency. He never heard the voice again, but his equipment, it picked up something else. A slow, deliberate knocking, 3 beats at a time, from somewhere deep below. When investigators compiled the passenger manifest for MH370, the list appeared straightforward: names, ages, nationalities. At first glance, there was nothing unusual, but as authorities began contacting families, a single discrepancy emerged. Seat 42B. The name assigned to it belonged to no one. No relatives came forward. No passport matched. No trace existed in any immigration system. Airport security footage confirmed a man boarded the plane in that seat. Yet even the most advanced facial recognition software failed to produce a match in any database worldwide. The CCTV footage was worse. When the man first appears in the security line, he's wearing a long black coat, his head slightly bowed. In several frames, his face is obscured at first. Investigators assumed it was a camera glitch, but upon closer inspection, the blur wasn't pixelated like normal technical errors. It looked organic, like a smudge of moving smoke. In one frame, a child standing nearby is looking up at him, wide-eyed, as if she sees something the camera can't. Witness interviews were contradictory. Some passengers remembered a tall man with unusually pale skin. Others swore he was short, dark-haired, and clean-shaven. A flight attendant who served him before takeoff described his hands as cold. Not like cold air, but cold in a way that felt wrong. The most disturbing account came from an airport janitor. He claimed that as the man passed through the boarding gate, the lights overhead flickered violently, and for just a second, the janitor thought he saw something else standing in the man's place. Something much taller, hunched over, with too many joints in its arms. Showed seat 42B's ticket was purchased with cash at a kiosk in a small travel agency in Penang. The transaction had no camera record, and the travel agent who handled it couldn't recall the customer's face at all. Like a dream, she said. Or maybe not even that. More like, I remember the shadow of him, but not him. After the disappearance, digital forensics teams examined the passenger list stored in the airline's database. Every name remained intact except for one. Seat 42B's entry had been corrupted, replaced by a single string of text. He was already here. 3 weeks after MH370 vanished, hope for survivors had all but evaporated. The official search area had shifted thousands of miles from its starting point, and debris sightings were almost always false alarms drifting garbage mistaken for wreckage, until the call came from a small fishing vessel operating in the remote southern Indian Ocean. The crew reported spotting something unusual tangled in a mass of seaweed. As they drew closer, the shape became clearer in airplane seat, its blue fabric torn and stained by salt water. The seatbelt was still buckled. The fisherman hauled it aboard. Wedged deep inside the seat pocket was a black, waterlogged smartphone. Its screen was cracked, but somehow, when connected to a power source, it flickered to life. There was only one surviving file, a video. The footage began in near total darkness. The camera was shaky, as if clutched by trembling hands. Oxygen masks dangled from the ceiling, swaying gently. The faint sound of water dripping somewhere inside the cabin echoed in the background. As the camera panned across the rows of seats, a shadow moved. Not a passenger, not any human shape. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to glide between the aisles without any visible steps. Its outline shimmered faintly, like heat rising from asphalt. Then came the breathing, slow, wet, close enough that the microphone distorted with each inhale. The camera jerked suddenly, spinning toward the front of the cabin. The cockpit door was wide open, and beyond it, nothing. No sky, no stars, no ocean. Just a black void, as if the front of the plane had been swallowed whole. And then, from somewhere behind the person filming, a hand long, pale, with too many knuckles reached for the lens. The recording cut to static. The fisherman who found the phone handed it to local authorities. Within 24 hours, the device was confiscated by a team in unmarked uniforms. The crew was ordered not to speak of it again, but one of the fishermen ignored that order. In a hushed phone call to a friend, he said that when they first touched the seat, it was ice cold, so cold it burned. And there was something else. It wasn't wet, not at all. In the 4th week of the search, satellite imaging teams combed through thousands of miles of open ocean. Most images showed nothing but endless water until one scan revealed something impossible. A small, irregular-shaped island appeared in the middle of the southern Indian Ocean. It wasn't on any nautical charts, not in any geological records. In fact, maritime maps specifically marked that location as ocean floor depth 4,000 meters. And yet there it was. The image showed dense jungle covering most of the landmass, but near the coastline, a strange metallic glint caught the analyst's attention. The shape was too uniform, too angular to be natural. Within hours, a remote search drone was deployed from an Australian naval vessel. Its camera feed transmitted back crystal-clear images until it got within a mile of the island. The water around it began to shift unnaturally, currents pulling in strange directions. The drone's compass spun wildly, alternating between north and due south in seconds. Then the feed glitched. For a fraction of a second, the image on the screen was not the ocean, but a rusted fuselage lying deep within the jungle. Its windows were shattered from the inside. Somethings moved in the shadows between the trees. And then the feed went black. When the drone's signal reconnected 2 minutes later, the island was gone. The coordinates showed nothing but empty ocean again. Officials dismissed the anomaly as a satellite error, claiming the island was likely an imaging artifact. But one of the naval technicians, a man named Harris, didn't buy it. He had been watching the live feed when the fuselage came into view, and he swore he saw a tail number partially visible on the wreckage. 9MMRO, the registration number of MH370. The next day, Harris failed to report for duty. His bunk was empty, his personal belongings neatly folded. The only thing left behind was a single sheet of paper on his desk. On it were 3 words, written in shaky handwriting. "It's still moving." 2 weeks after the mysterious island sighting, the Australian Navy quietly assembled a covert recovery team. No public announcement was made. Officially, they were conducting a deep ocean sonar calibration mission. Unofficially, they were going after what they believed to be the wreckage of MH370. The team consisted of 6 men, 4 divers, 1 communications officer, and Commander Louis A. Mann, with 20 years of recovery operations behind him. They were given strict instructions: no personal phones, no photographs, no transmissions except through the secure line. On the 3rd day of the mission, their vessel reached the coordinates where the island had appeared on the drone feed. At first, the horizon was empty, but as the fog thickened, something began to emerge from the mist. It was the island. Dense jungle canopy, black sand beaches, and there, visible through the trees, a jagged shape of corroded metal half buried in the earth. The fuselage. The divers went ashore. The air was humid, heavy with a metallic smell that clung to their clothes. Flies swarmed the wreckage, though no bodies were visible. The windows of the fuselage were shattered outward, glass scattered like frost across the ground. Lewis ordered the cockpit opened. Inside, the controls were covered in rust, but there was something strange about the windshield. It wasn't just broken. It was bent outward, as if something had forced its way out from inside. That's when they powered on the recovered flight recorder. At first, there was silence. Then came the captain's voice, trembling. "If anyone finds this, we didn't lose control. We were taken off course." A long pause. Then, faintly in the background, a second voice spoke. It was not human. Its pitch shifted unnaturally, like metal twisting underwater. The words were incomprehensible, but their rhythm felt deliberate, almost like it was addressing the listener directly. Every man in the cockpit felt it not in their ears, but in their bones. The voice stopped, and then, clear as day, in perfect English, "Do not come back." Moments later, the jungle outside erupted in movement, branches snapping, foliage shaking violently. Something was coming, something big. The team grabbed the recorder and ran for the shore. Only Lewis made it back to the boat. When asked what happened to the others, he simply stared at the floor and whispered, "They weren't taken. They followed it." 2 months after MH370 vanished, a container ship traveling through the southern Indian Ocean sent out a frantic distress call. They had found them. For people, 3 men and 1 woman were spotted floating in life vests, clinging to a half-inflated raft. Their clothes were shredded by salt and wind, their skin pale from exposure. The captain of the container ship ordered them brought aboard immediately. At first, it seemed like a miracle. The survivors were weak but alive, speaking little. None of them carried identification, but when asked their names, they all gave answers that matched missing passengers from MH370. Doctors in Perth prepared to receive them, but within 48 hours, the situation turned strange. Ship crew reported that the survivors never slept. Not once. They just sat or stood in silence, staring out to sea. Their lips moved constantly, as if whispering to themselves, but no one could hear the words. One crew member swore he saw the woman standing on the deck in the middle of the night, staring at the water. He approached to ask if she was all right. She turned to him slowly, her eyes reflecting no light at all, just bottomless black. She smiled, and then she said his name. The man panicked, running to the captain's quarters to report what he'd seen. But when they returned, she was gone. Gone. Over the side of the ship. into waters so cold that death would come in minutes. Yet by morning, she was back on deck, dry and unshivering, humming a low, tuneless sound. By the time the ship reached Perth, 2 of the crew were missing. The survivors were taken into government custody. No public announcement was made. The official story claimed the ship had arrived without incident. But one dock worker later came forward, anonymously, claiming he had seen the 4 being loaded into an unmarked black van. He said the woman caught his eye as she stepped inside and mouthed 2 words at him. "Not help me, not save us," she said. It's open. For months after Flight MH370 disappeared, the world had largely forgotten the mystery. Official search efforts had been suspended. Families mourned. Conspiracy theories flourished online. Then it happened. For exactly 19 seconds, the transponder of MH370 activated. The coordinates it transmitted placed it over a region sailors had long feared, an area known as the Drowning Circle, a patch of the southern Indian Ocean where compasses spun wildly and ships were known to vanish without a trace. Simultaneously, the signal contained a single audio clip. It was low at first, almost indistinguishable from static, but when amplified, it revealed something horrifying. Hundreds of voices, overlapping, screaming, crying, chanting in languages both living and dead. Some spoke in frantic pleas. "Help us! Get out!" Others whispered in ancient tongues no one alive had ever heard. And beneath it all, a deep resonance pulsed something massive, something conscious. Satellite observers who attempted to triangulate the signal reported their instruments behaving erratically. Time seemed wrong. Instruments ran backward, clocks desynchronized. Even experienced operators described an uneasy weight in the air, a feeling of being observed by something enormous, unseen, and intelligent. Meanwhile, amateur radio operators worldwide reported hearing the same distorted message. Some claimed it burned their ears. Others said it left them unable to sleep for days. Then came the official silence. All recordings, all reports were quietly confiscated. Governments issued statements claiming technical glitches and sensor malfunctions. But one leaked report, later dismissed as a hoax, suggested something even worse. The black box of MH370 had not stopped recording, and what it recorded next was not of human voices or engines. It was something alive, something calling, something that had been inside the plane. Those who heard the leaked recording described a final phrase, repeated over and over, in a voice that was neither male nor female. "They are coming for you too." For 19 seconds, the world unknowingly tuned into the last transmission of Flight 370, and then it was gone. It had been nearly 6 months since MH370 disappeared. The world had moved on, or so it seemed. Families still grieved in silence. Governments quietly archived files, claiming all leads exhausted. Yet, the truth lingered in the shadows, waiting. Then, a private investigator working for a family of a missing passenger received an unmarked package. Inside was a small black Devigno brand, no markings, only a single button. A note accompanied it, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Listen, do not share." Against every instinct, the investigator pressed play. What emerged was the black box's final recording, the real one, never before heard by the public. It began with the familiar voice of Captain Zahari, calm, professional, as if nothing had gone wrong. But then the static rose, thick and heavy, and beneath it, whispers emerged. Not human. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, creating a chorus that made the investigators' teeth ache. Then came a voice older than time itself, speaking in dozens of languages at once, some long dead, some not yet born. And finally, the words in broken, unmistakable English. "They have always been here, and they will come for you too." At that moment, the investigator felt a coldness like ice filling the room, pressing against the skin, sinking into the bones. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, creeping along the walls, moving in ways light could not explain. The device continued to play, repeating the final transmission, each repetition deeper, heavier, more insistent. Then the lights flickered, the air grew thick, and through the static, the investigator heard a sound. The same sound reported by those who had intercepted the ghost signals over the ocean. Slow, wet breathing. He turned. Nothing was there. Yet somehow, he knew he was not alone. The device finally went silent, but the feeling remained. Something had been released by that final transmission, something that had waited within the plane, beneath the waves, and now it was free. No one has reported seeing that investigator since. All that remains is the device, now on a shelf in a forgotten storage room, silent but not for long. Because the final transmission is not finished. It will never be finished. And somewhere, across the endless dark ocean, the voices are calling again. The end. For now. The mystery of Flight MH370 may never be fully solved, but the whispers, the signals, and the last transmission will haunt our imaginations forever. What do you think really happened? Leave your theories in the comments below. Smash that like button if this story gave you chills. And don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying true stories every week.